Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and I just watched Men in Black International and it was kind of disappointing, it was kind of boring, I did kind of get sleepy by this movie and it's really a shame because I really loved the first movie. Now all its sequels were kind of weaker but they were still good movies, they were still okay movies in my opinion. I liked all of them. This is the first one in this franchise that I can't say I really liked. Like I didn't hate it but I didn't really enjoy most of it. I enjoyed very specific moments. There were a few jokes that worked, there were a few neat moments, neat visuals, and the actors were good and the special effects were good, but the movie itself was boring. The story wasn't that interesting. The characters were not that interesting. The villains were not interesting. They were kind of boring. They didn't say anything. They were basically two humanoid aliens doing stuff. And I did like how they looked in their true form. That was kind of neat. It kind of reminds me of what people see during sleep paralysis. They sometimes see all kind of shadow people. So that was kind of interesting. But once they assumed their human form, they became totally boring villains. And there was another villain who was basically a mole in the Men in Black organization. And the movie did that whole red herring thing to try to surprise us, and so they set up one character as being very annoying, so that you think he's the bad guy, and then the other one, who looked like the good guy, turned out to be the bad guy in the end, and I totally predicted this twist right away, maybe because I just watched too many movies, because a lot of movies do that, and so I could see it coming from a mile away. The main character was kind of a Mary Sue, like she becomes an agent in 1 second, she doesn't need any training, she's an agent before she's even an agent. She's better than all the other agents, she doesn't need anyone's help, she knows everything already, so that was kind of funny how quickly she becomes the best agent ever. So that's definitely felt like a Mary Sue situation, but as for all that stuff with, laughing at Men in Black not being inclusive toward women and all of that and changing the name, all of that was played for jokes in the movie, so I don't think there's anything wrong in any of those scenes because they used all of that as a joke for humor, and so that's why I'm fine with that. A lot of people online always complain about all that kind of stuff, all the social justice warrior stuff. I think if it's done humoristically, that's fine. It's like a parody of all of those things, and so that's okay. And Hemsworth was also good. His character was kind of dumb, but that was part of the humor, I guess, so that's okay. And there was one joke in the movie about him being Thor because he tried to get a hammer and he tried to pull it with the force or something, so that reminded me of Thor. So that was funny. Most of the jokes in this movie didn't really work for me. Once in a while they did. Sometimes the simplest jokes which had nothing to do with the bizarre situation and the aliens and all of that, sometimes the simple, normal day kind of stuff was funnier. For example, when Agent M, Agent Mary Sue, said that she wants to drive, and so she sits at the driver's seat, and then it turns out the wheel is on the other side because it's all in Britain. So that was kind of funny, but that's the kind of joke you could find in a normal movie, not in a science fiction, fantasy kind of setting at all. And so most of the jokes for me kind of fell flat. All the stuff with the weird aliens, I'm not sure if I'm just kind of tired of all that kind of stuff. Like I loved all of that in the previous movies, in all the Men in Black movies. I loved all the bizarre, exotic aliens. They always had something strange and unique and funny and all of that. In this movie it kind of felt weak. There were a few maybe, but most of it kind of felt lazy. It felt like, oh, so now the alien is hiding in the beard of someone, the beard is someone's alien. Other times it's just a strange looking humanoid alien. There were those two villains who were kind of shadowy people, which looked like they're made of stars or something, so that special effect was kind of neat, but again the idea was kind of a 1 second idea, so there was very little rewatchability in this movie compared to the others, because nothing was really that imaginative or interesting. And a lot of the stuff was just recycled from the previous movies, so they have all these energy guns which they can look tiny but they actually can cause a huge destruction and stuff like that, but these are the same kind of jokes that were in the previous movies, so it felt very unoriginal and not as imaginative and not as fresh, and just overall this movie kind of felt boring. Also a problem with the special effects, there were some CGI characters who just looked way too cartoony. Like there was one alien creature that was like a small toy and he was hopping around, jumping around, and it was so cartoony that it made the whole movie feel kind of childish. Now the first Men in Black movie also had like small aliens and stuff like that, but they always used practical effects, so it looked much real, and you didn't see that creature kind of hopping around and stuff. And yet in this movie they have this new sidekick alien who is a tiny figure, and he's jumping around and he's with them in the action, and it's all looks so fake, so cartoony, and I cannot take it seriously at all. So it kind of takes me out of it, and there is no sense of danger to the characters at all because they go with the humor kind of too much, and so at no point do you feel any actual stakes at all, and so that's also kind of a problem. I do feel like a movie should have some sense of realism, unless it's like a totally bizarre comedy like Naked Gun or something like that, which is totally, you can do whatever you want, but then you have to make it really funny for it to be worthwhile, because you basically throw any sense of tension out of the window, so you will have no tension in the movie, there is no sense of realism at all, so you should have all your jokes be really funny to make it worthwhile. But in this movie it's not that funny, and so it's kind of boring. And so it could have worked better as a more serious science fiction movie if they set it up as a kind of crime drama, investigation. With aliens in it, it could have been more interesting, because it's like the middle ground between all of these things, and none of them are really done that well. So in short, this movie was watchable for a one-time viewing. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. Unlike the first movie, which I rewatched countless times, this one just once was enough for me. And also I want to talk about a scene that really annoyed me and took me out of the movie. And as you know, I'm a big fan of attention to detail and to the continuity between movies and stuff like that. And in this movie they had a pretty big mistake when it contradicted the first movie, because in the first movie Tommy Lee Jones said that the Men in Black organization was set up somewhere in the 50s, that he was one of the first agents, that he was actually going on a date with a woman and he had some flowers, but instead ended up in first contact with aliens, and so he gave those flowers to the alien, and then the aliens who wanted to immigrate to Earth, they helped them set up the Men in Black organization. And so it existed from the 50s. And yet in this movie we suddenly have a scene that shows that Men in Black started back in the 19th century. And they said that Eiffel, the guy who built the Eiffel Tower, was actually a Men in Black agent, one of the first ones. And that already a whole bunch of aliens immigrated to Earth. And this is a direct contradiction with the first movie. Also, the amount of aliens on Earth is also way too big, because in the first one they only said that I think a couple thousand were on Earth. And yet here apparently there are aliens everywhere, like everywhere you go there are aliens. Even though Tommy Lee Jones said that most of the aliens live in New York and only a couple thousand, and yet in this movie they go to a whole bunch of countries and there are aliens in every corner. And so that's also kind of a contradiction, even though we can say this is taking place a few years after that, so maybe more aliens came over. By the way, this raises kind of an interesting question about the morality of the Men in Black, because this is a secret organization that most of the humans on Earth are unaware of, and yet they give permission to aliens to come over to Earth and to live among humans and bring a whole bunch of dangers to the planet, and yet the general population is unaware and never agreed to any of this. So doesn't this make the Men in Black organization kind of immoral and of course illegal? Because they're operating outside of any jurisdiction of any government and making up such big decisions for the entire planet without even consulting and without any kind of transparency, without the knowledge of the normal people. So doesn't that make them kind of the bad guys? So anyway, about that contradiction, it really annoyed me for a few reasons. First of all, it took me out of the movie, because I had to scratch my head and think about, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense, this is a contradiction. So that's one problem. Another problem is that it annoyed me to think that the person who wrote this movie didn't even bother to watch the first movie and to take notes and pay attention to the details, and so it really pissed me off. And there was no reason for that. Like, I could forgive this if they had some kind of reason to say that the Men in Black existed before it was said in the first movie. If they had some kind of reason for that, I could forgive this, but they didn't. So it was just said for no reason, and just adds a continuity issue for absolutely no reason. And also they could have simply phrased it differently. They could have said there have been aliens on Earth since before Men in Black, or that there was another organization before Men in Black, but that's not what they did. They said directly that that was the first, one of the first Men in Black agents. And so this is just a contradiction for no reason, so I cannot forgive this. This is totally unnecessary. This serves no purpose in the story except to piss off real fans of the first movie, who do remember all the details, and so they would all scratch their heads and it would take them out of the movie. And so this really annoyed me, so that's why I made the whole review. I probably, if not for that scene, I wouldn't be making this review at all, but I wanted to point out this mistake. And it really shows the laziness of the movie producers, not just the screenwriter, but everyone involved, because no one picked up on this mistake. So that means everybody involved were too lazy, or didn't care, or were not even fans of the original movie. And I really don't get it. Like, if I was hired to be a scriptwriter or a producer or a director of a sequel to a big movie, wouldn't I at least watch the first movie and take some notes and try to tie it well with the first movie if this is supposed to be a sequel? So it's obvious to me no one did that, and so that's really disappointing. That means they only used the title to draw viewers and they didn't really care. And also they didn't really have any new idea. They just wanted to use this title and to make this, to slap this movie together just to make some money, and they didn't really have any new ideas to add to it. So they just recycled ideas from the previous movies, did it in a much more lazy way, totally uncreative, unimaginative, no new ideas at all. And so that's why the result sucks. That's why it feels so empty. It feels so boring. And it's really sad because this universe was actually has a brilliant setup. It has so much potential. They can do so many things with it, and yet they don't do anything new at all. Like for example, I think there was a Men in Black cartoon, by the way, and I think I watched an episode or two of that. And I remember they were going to different planets and meeting aliens on their own planets, and so that was far more interesting. So if they did such a thing in the movie, it would have been a lot better. Like I can understand it will cost a lot more, but maybe just have one scene on a different planet. Like most of the movie can be on Earth, and then maybe in the end of the movie they will go to a different planet and show us something amazing, exotic. Of course, it will be more expensive. That's why they didn't do it. So that's why this movie feels so cheap and lazy and boring, uninspiring, unimaginative. And this is a problem with a lot of movies nowadays, that they just do a sequel just for the sake of drawing the viewers, the old fans of whatever movie they're doing a sequel to. And it's not really a sequel, it's basically a reboot. It's basically the same story again with new actors and new characters, and just trying to cash in on the recognizable title to make sure they don't lose money, and that's it. This is why movies suck nowadays. So many movies have this kind of pattern. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to say about this one. So let me know what you think and we can discuss it in the comment section. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.